that all men are created equal.
Black Man Thinkin.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Black Man Thinkin.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you are dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Black Man Thinkin.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Black Man Thinkin.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Black Man Thinkin.
Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin, here on the dominant force in Internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us, also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5, North Florida Talk Radio, Freedom in AmericaRadio.com, and WLBB's News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Happy to be with you. Well, we just had this weekend an event which kind of calls into question the idea that all the world hates Donald Trump. That is what you would believe if you simply follow the news media, the CNN, the MSNBC, NBC without the MS, New York Times, LA Times, Fox News, you name it. Almost every one of what is considered the mainstream or major news outlets would have you believe that everybody in the world hates Donald Trump. All the leaders in the world hate Donald Trump. However, we just had over this weekend Canada, Mexico, and the United States signing, or at least the leaders of those governments signing, a new trade agreement to replace NAFTA. For those who do not recall what NAFTA is what was described by H. Ross Perot back in the 92 election as the source of a great sucking sound in the South, which would be taking jobs out of America. Donald Trump apparently agreed with that and set during his campaign a path, or made it a campaign pledge of sorts, to deal with NAFTA. As he also said, we have bad trade agreements. He did identify NAFTA as one of them. And of course, this was going to be opposed because Donald Trump is trying to raise all the tariffs, and Donald Trump is trying to mess up everything for farmers and everything else, and he's trying to screw other countries so they don't want to do business with us, and they're not doing this. Really? Okay. So let's start with how this was being described in Mexico at the beginning of October, because if you'll remember, Mexico pretty much signed on relatively quickly. The U.S. and Mexico made an agreement and got that done pretty quickly. Here's a report from CGTN about how the deal was viewed in Mexico.
Well, here in Mexico, after 13 months of renegotiation and uncertainty, this new NAFTA deal, the USMCA, is being heralded as a return to economic stability for the country. Indeed, Mexico's president this morning has come out and stated that this deal is going to be a win-win-win for all three countries involved, and his private sector back him up on that, with one prominent business union stating that the new deal is a fundamental tool to strengthen Mexico's position in the world Now, reaching this deal ahead of the US midterms, which few expected here in Mexico, has been, many think, due to the Mexican government's handling of the Trump administration and their tariffs. Mexico has imposed retaliatory tariffs on US products, but particularly focusing on sectors which are heavily Trump, which are part of Trump's voter base, including steel, wheat, bourbon, amongst many others. But here in Mexico, the peso has recovered this morning, and the deal now has to go to Congress to be ratified, but that is not expected to take too long, with analysts here saying that it should be ready to roll by the end of November. So the USMCA seen here in Mexico, at least for now, as light at the end of the tunnel for Mexico's economy. Alistair Baverstock, CGTN, here in Mexico.
Now, let's pick up on the interesting thing here that matters, which is Mexico is calling it a win-win-win, and you have one of their major labor leaders calling this essential for improving Mexico's standing on the world stage. Does that sound like a country that is now hating on Donald Trump? Does it? I'm just curious. Does that strike you as someone who is just terribly bothered by Donald Trump? Now, the other thing that I found, and it's really laughable to me, it's laughable. You have to remember something about trade in the United States. The United States is not an export-driven country. I think about 12% of the U.S. economy is export, and that's to contrast that to, say, a place like China, which is more like, 30% plus. We're not that export driven. And also, you heard the part where, Mexico did the retaliatory tariffs. And can I remind you guys of something, just in case you weren't aware? The U.S. economy is about $19 trillion annually. The Mexican economy is 1.1 trillion. We are nearly more than an order of magnitude, nearly twice one order of magnitude higher. We are 18 times, almost 18 times bigger than Mexico's economy. The idea that their retaliatory tariffs, when everybody does business with the United States, and the United States is not a big tariff-driven nation, that they had any impact on driving the deal one way or another is laughable. Despite what the media would tell you, Mexico is hurting the United States. $1 can't hurt 19. That's the difference in the size of the economy. $1 Mexico versus $19. I'm talking about relative size. So anyway, Mexico thought it was a good deal. Said it was a win-win-win for all three countries. This is back in October. Also in October, Trump and Trudeau, the fake eyebrow Prime Minister of Canada, had relatively positive comments to make about the trade agreement then. This is from the Financial Times talking about comments from Trump and Trudeau.
I have to certainly give my highest regards to Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau. A lot of stories came out about Justin and I having difficulty together than we did over the trade deal. But I'll tell you, it's turned out to be a very, very good deal for both. The deal includes a substantial increase in our farmers' opportunities to export American wheat, poultry, eggs, and dairy, including milk, butter, cheese, yogurt, and ice cream, to name a few. This is also a historic win for American manufacturers and American auto workers who have been treated so badly. We've lost so many jobs over the years under NAFTA.
The question of NAFTA and renegotiating NAFTA has been a challenge in conversations with the President, with the administration over these past 13 months. But there is also no question that now that we have moved forward on a USMCA that is good news for all three of our countries. We also recognize that moving forward on eliminating the tariffs on steel and aluminum remains a priority for us, for Mexico, and something that the Americans have indicated that they are more than willing to work on. So we're going to continue discussing that issue and other issues between our two countries in a positive, good faith way, knowing that we've made significant progress and that there's always more to do.
So you have the more reserved praise, I guess you could call it, from the Prime Minister of Canada, even though Donald Trump just made it clear, hey, on things where Canada was not having open markets, those markets in this agreement would now be more open. Of course, we have to remember that these agreements now have to go to the various legislatures, national legislatures of the several countries who signed it and be approved. It may not get approved in the United States, so let me not sugarcoat that at all. I don't know that it's not good. It's likely to be approved in Mexico. I think, despite Prime Minister Fake Eyebrows' discussion to the contrary, it's likely to be approved in Canada. But of course, here in the United States, with the Democrats having stolen the election to give them control of the House just earlier, last month, they are not in any hurry to do something that would make their sworn enemy, Donald Trump, look good in the eyes of the world, or definitely in the eyes of the American people. And giving him this treaty would, of course, be considered a win for Trump. And of course, they couldn't have that. But we'll see, because at the end of the day, nobody thinks the Democrats deliver on jobs. They never have. So if after Donald Trump has spent more than 2 years delivering on jobs, they do something that's going to kill jobs, I don't know how well that's going to sit with an election just 23 months away. An election is always no more than 23 months away in the United States. Nevertheless, that was back in end of October. This weekend, you had the signing of the agreement.
I'm honored to be here with President Enrique Peña Nieto, become a great friend of Mexico, and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who has also become a great friend. This has been a battle, and battles sometimes make great friendships, so it's really terrific. With our signatures today, we will formally declare the intention of our three countries to replace NAFTA with the USMCA, a truly groundbreaking achievement. In short, this is a model agreement that changes the trade landscape forever, and this is an agreement that, first and foremost, benefits working people, something of great importance to all three of us here today. President, I must say, Peña Nieto and Prime Minister Trudeau, we've worked hard on this agreement. It's been long and hard. We've taken a lot of barbs and a little abuse, and we got there. It's great for all of our countries. Thank you for your close partnership throughout this process. This new agreement will ensure a future of prosperity and innovation for Mexico, Canada, and the United States.
There's much more work to do in lowering trade barriers and in fostering growth that benefits everyone. But reaching a new free trade agreement with the United States and Mexico is a major step for our economy. Canadians got here because Team Canada was driven by the interests of the middle class. Free and fair trade leads to more and better paying middle class jobs for more people. And the benefits of trade must be broadly and fairly shared. That is what modernizing NAFTA achieves, and that is why it was always so important to get this new agreement done right. As a result, the tariff-free access that NAFTA guaranteed for more than 70% of Canada's total exports is secure. And that's essential for businesses, families, jobs, entrepreneurs, and hard-working people in every corner of our country. As I said, the task isn't done. There is more hard work ahead to build resilient, strong economies that support families everywhere in Canada. As I discussed with President Trump a few days ago, the recent plant closures by General Motors, which affects thousands of Canadian and American workers and their families, are a heavy blow. Make no mistake, we will stand up for our workers and fight for their families and their communities. And Donald, It's all the more reason why we need to keep working to remove the tariffs on steel and aluminum between our countries. With hard work, goodwill, and determination, I'm confident we will get there. Our shared interests, prosperity, and security demand it.
You know, one thing I got to give Prime Minister Fake Eyebrows Trudeau there, he can profile with the best of them. He's beaten and is still trying to profile. We're going to fight. I said, let me help you out with something. Remember what I told you about Mexico's economy and its relative size to the United States, like $1 out of 18? Well, more like, 17. More about $17.20. $1 is about $17.25. That's how much bigger the American economy is than than Mexico. It's almost 18 times larger. It's more than 11 times larger than Canada. Mexico's economy is $1.1 trillion. Canada is $1.7 trillion. The United States is $19.4 trillion. You're not going to bully the United States into anything. You're going to take what they give you, first of all. The idea that Mexico has the common sense, you might want to call it, to see the North American trade agreement as a win-win-win, but Canada is still trying to talk its way into how they're going to get more out of the United States. That just tells you that dude is just out of touch. He was the same dude who waited for Donald Trump to get on a plane to talk trash about him with respect to trade, and here he is signing the agreement. But let me make sure you get this clear. Donald Trump values relationships, but Donald Trump is about transactions. He's calling these people friends. Why? Because they're helping him reach the transactions that he wants to have. And at the end of the day, Donald Trump doesn't have enemies that help him get what he wants. And he wanted a new agreement. He was even willing to make an agreement that was good for everyone involved. But guess what? It supposedly benefits the American people. Nobody's disputing that. It's better than NAFTA. No one's disputing that. And when all is said and done, bear this in mind. If these guys really dislike Donald Trump, and if Donald Trump was what the media portrayed him to be, and was trying to shaft everybody on trade, I don't know why Mexico would call it a win-win-win for all three countries, but also, would you sign an agreement that hurts your country with somebody that you disliked? I know I wouldn't. I can't think of a world leader who would. And the idea that Canada and Mexico, their leaders did, and remember, even the incoming president of Mexico, because the guy who signed the agreement is going to be out the door soon, the incoming president of Mexico also thinks it's a good idea. He likes the agreement. But the press would have you believe that all these people hate Donald Trump, so why are they signing this agreement? Donald Trump has him over a barrel. Then why is they calling it a win-win-win? Well, Trudeau doesn't like it. Nobody cares what Trudeau thinks. Most of Canada's not that crazy about anything that Trudeau thinks. They don't think he tells the truth. Well, we know Donald Trump's a liar. Mexico didn't think he was lying on trade. Oh, and by the way, if you go to other places, you can see Trudeau, I guess the foreign secretary or the equivalent of, or I guess the equivalent of our Secretary of State in the United States, praising the agreement, even though he keeps talking about, well, you don't like the fact that the United States took back an advantage that you had not earned, and now you're trying to find a way to get that back. And that is steel and aluminum. You were taking advantage. Well, guess what? The United States changed that advantage and therefore opened up markets for American farmers. And as far as GM is concerned, let me help you. GM was late to the party with respect to remote driving cars, vehicles that will be, self-driving, and also late to the party on the ride share. They were still building cars for a market that was changing, and they did not respond. As a result, they're getting ready to get hurt. Ford is in a not much different battle. But does that mean cars are not going to be made in the United States? Have you forgotten that almost everybody who builds cars builds them in the United States? Not just Ford, not just GM. I haven't heard any of them crying. Back to the point. If you think people hate Donald Trump because the media says they hate Donald Trump, you just don't understand who Trump is. He gets things done, and you don't do things like this with people you dislike. Stanley, Levy, Black Man Thinking. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking, here on the dominant force in Internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us, also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Well, we have another dead globalist. And by that, of course, we are speaking of the recently deceased George Herbert Walker Bush, who was the 41st President of the United States. And we're basically talking about someone on the order of, but having operated in a higher office and with a slightly tamer temperament than that of one former and now late Senator John McCain. These are effectively the same guy. One of them actually happened to reach the presidency. And what I find most interesting is how the same people who are most into globalism now seem to be breaking their arms, patting themselves on the back to heap praise on a president that they despised while he was in office. And I'm speaking of white progressives who never had anything good to say about George W. Bush, and black progressives who are just laughable. We can't speak ill of the dead. I said, if you can talk trash about him while he lives, why does the date passing and him going into the ground change the way you feel about him? It doesn't. And it doesn't change whatever it was he did with which you disagreed. So help me out with that hypocrisy that you are practicing. Speaking of hypocrisy, let's talk about the George H.W. Bush legacy. This is just the facts. He served for 8 years as Ronald Reagan's vice president. And let's remember, he was no friend of Reagan during the 1980 campaign for the Republican nomination. The whole term of voodoo economics with respect to Reagan's economic policy, that was a term that came out of George H.W. Bush's mouth. This won't work. Then he becomes vice president, and the thing he says doesn't work, does work. To launch the greatest post-war economic expansion in history up to that point. But during the campaign, he was convinced and wanted everybody else to know that Mr. Reagan's policies could not work. Well, they worked so well that in 1988, as he sought to replace Ronald Reagan as president, he had these remarks at the 1988 Republican National Convention.
I'm the one who will not raise taxes. My opponent now says he'll raise them as a last resort or a third resort. But when a politician talks like that, you know that's one resort he'll be checking into. And my opponent won't rule out raising taxes, but I will, and the Congress will push me to raise taxes, and I'll say no, and they'll push, and I'll say no, and they'll push again, and I'll say to them, read my lips. No new taxes. I say it without boast or bravado. I've fought for my country. I've served. I've built. And I'll go from the hills to the hollows, from the cities to the suburbs, to the loneliest town on the quietest street, to take our message of hope and growth for every American, to every American. I will keep America moving forward, always forward, for a better America, for an endless, enduring dream and 1,000 points of light. This is my mission, and I will complete it.
More on that 1,000 points of light later, but the most memorable line of the 1988 presidential campaign was George H.W. Bush at the RNC saying that when Congress would push him on tax increases, he would say, "Read my lips, no new taxes." Well, that was good up until around the midterm. In 1990, we had this occurring, being reported on by Fox News. I think it was a local affiliate in D.C. at the time, but they noticed that there had been a change in the president's rhetoric with regard to the Democrats in Congress.
Back when George Bush ran for president a couple of years ago, he made a promise that he would not raise taxes. It helped to get him elected, but some people did not think he would be able to keep that promise, and now it looks like they were right. Patrick McGrath reports.
Read my lips.
It was the most memorable phrase of the 1988 presidential campaign, George Bush's unequivocal statement that he would not raise taxes. But now he has issued a written statement saying the size of the deficit problem and the need for a package that can be enacted require all of the following. And on the list that followed were the words tax revenue increases.
Have you pulled back on your no new tax pledge, sir? I'm going to let that statement speak for itself. And I want to see this economy grow. I want jobs. I want to see the deficit down. And this bipartisan statement speaks for itself.
Despite repeated questions, the president would not even utter the word taxes or admit that he had broken his campaign pledge. The president's statement was worked out with Democratic congressional leaders.
Well, the president has concluded that tax increases are necessary, along with other changes as specified in the statement, and we share the president's view.
The Democrats, for their part, agree that cuts must be made in entitlement programs and domestic spending.
No specific measures were discussed, and there is no agreement with respect to any specific measure.
By previous agreement, the Democratic leaders would not accuse the president of breaking his no new taxes promise, but rank-and-file Democrats do not feel bound to hold their tongues.
The charade is finally over. But what a price the American people have paid for this masquerade. In the 2 years that it took George Bush to find the means of eating his own words, a hemorrhaging deficit consumed billions of dollars of interest payments. The S&L crisis went unanswered, weakening our economy and stealing from our savings.
Conservative Republicans are also upset.
Therefore, we regard a tax increase as unacceptable.
Congressman Walker's opposition to taxes didn't stop him and several hundred other members of Congress from joining President Bush at the White House for an evening barbecue.
And let me say to the members of the Congress that Barbara and I are delighted that you came down here. A good, relaxed evening and a beautiful night at the White House. We got a lot of work ahead.
There's a lot of work ahead indeed for the president and the Congress if they are to agree on the specifics of raising taxes and cutting entitlements before the August congressional recess. From the White House, Patrick McGrath, Fox News, Channel 5.
Say what you want, but that is the Bush legacy. The Bush legacy from the 41st president is of broken promises that led to the U.S. economy starting to get away from the very significant growth that it experienced under Reagan. People forget that under Ronald Reagan, we got down to the point where there were basically two tax brackets. There was a 15% and a 28%, I believe it was, and that was it. And the economy was rolling. People were doing well. Businesses were starting. We got out of double-digit unemployment, got out of double-digit inflation, got out of double-digit federal interest rates, all by cutting taxes and deregulating the economy. Pretty much the same thing that Donald Trump is trying to do now, but has had nowhere near the level of success on reducing taxes that Ronald Reagan has. Maybe it has something to do with his personal style. I do not know. All I know is taxes are still higher than they need to be if you want the United States to do well. If you want to do good, then we're okay. But if you're looking for great, then taxes are simply too high. the American people earn their money. They deserve to keep as much of it as possible. Period. And if you really believe that you need tax revenue increases, someone explained to me how it was that when Ronald Reagan cut taxes, over the course of his administration, they took in more money, almost double the amount of tax revenue from the lower tax rates that were seen when Jimmy Carter was president. If raising taxes works, even the tax cuts under Bush 43 resulted in so much revenue that by 2005 they were taking in more money than in any year of the Clinton administration, and the Clinton administration is credited correctly as a very good time for the American economy. How can taking in more money be a bad thing? Oh, that's right. You have to think like what George H.W. Bush, and actually George W. Bush is as well. You have to think like a globalist. You can't have the American people doing all that well relative to the rest of the world and expect for them to accept a new world order. You can't do that and expect them to accept globalism the way you've already accepted it, because you don't need the money, do you, Mr. Bush? He's gone now. I understand that. Back to that points of light thing, which I thought was just fascinating. Here's how George Bush explained it during his inauguration in 1989.
I've spoken of 1,000 points of light, of all the community organizations that are spread like stars throughout the nation doing good. We will work hand in hand, encouraging, sometimes leading, sometimes being led, rewarding. We will work on this in the White House, in the cabinet agencies. I will go to the people and the programs that are the brighter points of light, and I'll ask every member of my government to become involved. The old ideas are new again because they're not old. They are timeless. Duty, sacrifice, commitment, and a patriotism that finds its expression in taking part and pitching in.
I'm going to tell you that when I hear that, that reminds me of that line, I think it's from Hamlet, or it may be from Macbeth. "'Tis a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and wind signifying nothing." Well, we're going to have, my government's going to get involved with all the people doing good in the country. Really? What the heck does... Donald Trump had the same problem with that I have with it now. And he may have expressed it a little bit more or less artfully, but he had this to say at a rally back in July regarding the 1,000 points of light.
Of course, now people are trying to read the tea leaves ahead of 9 p.m. on Monday, when we'll find out who it actually is. Of course, Judge Kavanaugh has ties to the Bush family. President Trump had something to say about the Bushes last night. Listen to this.
We are finally putting America first. We're putting America first. And by the way, you know, all the rhetoric you see here, the 1,000 points of light. What the hell was that, by the way? 1,000 points of light. What did that mean? Does anyone know? I know one thing. Make America great again, we understand. Putting America first, we understand. 1,000 points of light. I never quite got that one. Tried to say, what the hell is that? Has anyone ever figured that one out? It was put up by a Republican, wasn't it?
So there are those who listened out last night and went, Judge Kavanaugh's out. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think the 1,000 points of light comment has anything to do with Judge Kavanaugh. Obviously a strong conservative, a great judge, just like the other judges on this list. They're all rock solid. They're all conservatives, but well within the mainstream. At the end of the day, by the way, look, the president, I get it. He's got some concerns about the Bushes, but the reality is George H.W. Bush was the vice president for the first president, President Reagan, who said, make America great again. And George W. Bush, solid conservative. I served under him as a Judge Kavanaugh. This idea that somehow George W. Bush wasn't conservative is ridiculous.
Okay. Jameel Jaffers, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Melissa.
For those who haven't figured it out yet, George H.W. Bush was not a conservative. He was a pragmatic globalist. One of the reasons that I can say that and not bite my tongue at all has to do with his most stunning success as president, and that is the prosecution of the first war against Iraq. What George W. Bush did in putting together a coalition of nations, not that the United States needs a coalition to take out a country like Iraq, but to make sure that everybody was on board and there would be no political pushback, or at least not any that was significant, that was indeed a master stroke. Only a globalist could do that. Only a globalist would have reached out to the same people in the same way that George H.W. Bush did to build that unnecessary coalition. Let me make sure you understand that it was a militarily unnecessary coalition. The United States does not need help to take out a third-rate power like Iraq. But for that to be put in the right terms and to have people say the right things about it and to accept it without criticism, you have to make the United States look like they are on board with the globalist agenda, and George H.W. Bush could do that. He looked wonderful on the world stage. The problem was, by the end of his term, he didn't look like he was as plugged in to the people of the United States as he was with those who were interested in the New World Order.
The problem was that when you would ask him to do something symbolic, like going down to this little town near Camp David and showing concern for the economy, he saw it as not being true. It's not real. And what was real to him was he needed to buy some gifts for his grandkids. And so in his mind, that was a far more realistic thing to do. And it's just one of those things where it ended up working against him.
Cash. I don't normally have any, but I just got replenished.
When Bush flew to Tokyo with American automakers in an effort to create more jobs, he soldiered on despite a case of the flu. At a formal state dinner, he got sick on the Japanese Prime Minister. These last 2 months have been the worst of my presidency, he told a friend, and the last year has been the worst of my political career. Things would not get any better. The next month, he was skewered for seeming out of touch at a grocers convention. He marveled at new technology that could read a shredded barcode. The New York Times said he didn't know how an ordinary checkout counter worked.
The story stuck because it fed in with what was being argued by his opponents, both on the far right and on the Democrats, that Bush had lost touch with the American people.
He had lost touch with the American people. He had also lost touch with the American economy. After he broke his pledge, there was a recession in 1990 and 1991. No new taxes. Read my lips. That's what he says in 1988. And then in 1990, we need new tax revenue increases. And then the economy tanks and we have a recession. You don't understand what it is to go to a grocery store and deal with a checkout scanner. You want to make a symbolic purchase to show that you want people to go out and spend money to uplift the American economy, and you spend $28 on socks. Tube socks, as it turns out. But you have no problem working with the powers of the world to put in check Saddam Hussein. Let me tell you why I still say that is a crowning achievement and something worth noting, is because he did show the interesting international wisdom of understanding that slapping Saddam Hussein around but leaving him in place was what would protect that region and the world from Iran. Somehow his son missed that message. Don't ask me why, but I think it has to do still with the overall timing of how you pursue globalism. George W. Bush, also known as Bush 43, came out criticizing Donald Trump after saying nothing for 8 years of the Obama administration, which is both the most globalistic administration in my lifetime. He had nothing to say during any of that, but he basically had to speak up during the Trump administration saying we cannot wish globalism away. The problem is we're not trying to wish it away. We're simply pushing back against it, just like they did in Great Britain, just like they're starting to do in Italy, just like the German people are starting to wake up and wonder, which is why Angela Merkel will no longer be Prime Minister, or Chancellor, excuse me. I will say this without biting my tongue. I have sympathy for the Bush family. They have lost a patriarch. I have the same sympathy for the McCain family when they had lost a patriarch. That hurts. It doesn't matter who the guy was or what he is or anything else. If that's your father, if that's your grandfather, and he's been there for you and he's done the reasonably good things, at least the reasonably good things that a father or grandfather would do and supported you, then it hurts when he's gone, and that is to be respected. But George H.W. Bush did not serve the American people well. He didn't. He served his family well. I agree with that. He was part of a very potent political dynasty in these United States. But at the end of the day, he's a globalist. And the fact that he's gone is not a terrible thing to me. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', will be back after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Final segment of this first hour. We've had a lot of discussion recently about immigration, and of course there's the caravan that is currently stalled in Mexico after being repelled by the Border Patrol when they sought to storm the border. Let me remind people that this is not something that is going to go away, as opposed, the way it's like, oh, we had a news story, it's at the border, they had to tear gas, it was terrible, and it's all passing. It's not working like that. Back at the end of October, Fox News actually let you know that we're not dealing with an incident as much as we are dealing with a movement.
We're riding with the Oaxaca Municipal Police right now so you can get a sight of really how big this caravan is. They're on top of this bridge in Niltepec because they want to catch rides to keep going. This is about a mile long all the way up there. 18-wheelers, oil tankers, buses as people try and make their way towards America, completely not deterred in any way by President Trump saying he's putting 5,200 troops on the border, or the fact that he says that he may change even birthright citizenship. And what's even more, guys, is that not one, but two more caravans have been inspired by the success in advance of this one. There is a large group battling on the Guatemala-Mexico border now with police trying to cross a river there, much like this one did, and a third one down in El Salvador making its way up to the Guatemala-Mexico border. They're going to join them. If you add those two together, they're a few thousand in numbers, too. So it would appear this seems to be growing at this point, guys.
Wow. So the numbers are growing. They're not being deflected.
Yeah, Griff, we've interviewed so many people out here on the Fox Square today, and number one issue clearly is immigration for them and for these voters.
And thank you very much for giving us that unique point of view as you are there on the top of that truck.
So, at the end of October, you had two more caravans forming and moving from Central America toward the United States. This is kind of the same thing that you see during hurricane season. You have people lined up. You have hurricanes lined up in the Atlantic Ocean making their way westward toward the United States. You have the same thing now, one caravan after another. This is not going to end. It's not designed to end. And if you have an understanding of what's going on here, what's really at stake, then this next clip will help you get a grip on what's really happening.
Ladies and gentlemen of the press, dear guests, it's nice to have you here on our Strasbourg press conference, and I would like to say some words on the Global Compact on Migration. On the 10th and 11th of December, there will be an international congress in Marrakesh, Morocco, with regard to this Global Compact on Migration. And the participating countries are set to sign this agreement. And although this joint agreement isn't binding, it's still meant to be the legal framework on which the participating countries commit themselves to build new legislation. And one basic element of this new agreement is the extension of the definition of hate speech. The agreement wants to criminalize migration speech. Criticism of migration will become a criminal offense. And media outlets, and that also concerns you, that give room to criticism of migration can be shut down. The Compact for Migration is legalization of mass migration. It's declaring migration as a human right. So in fact, it will become impossible to criticize Ms. Merkel's welcome migrants politics without being at risk to be jailed for hate speech. So this agreement, to our humble opinion, is a coup d'etat of pro-migrant liberal globalists. And it will greatly benefit multinationals. Because, you know, countries who import the third world will become the third world. And it's absolutely clear, and you all know that in third world countries, multinationals dictate the rules. It will become impossible to state that integration of migrants from Islamic countries in Western cultures is impossible. It will become impossible to mention the fact that mass migration deteriorates the Western welfare systems, and the fact that mass migration leads to explosive surge of rape and murder. And this makes the timing of the Compact on Migration significant, as we're heading towards elections of the European Parliament next year. With this treaty, the EU member states and the European Commission are destroying the political level playing field. It allows them to cut funding of migration-critical political parties and silencing the political opposition. And to me, I would like to state this very clearly, the Tommy Robinson case in the UK is the first example to be set. And it will be an example that will follow, and probably during the elections, based on the Global Compact on Migration. So, that means the conclusion can already be that European Parliament elections will be rigged. And only the United States of America, Australia and Hungary have indicated not to sign this agreement. So we herewith urge every country that opposes mass migration to reject this compact. Thank you.
The United Nations wants to have a compact on international migration, which basically says everyone from anywhere should be able to go to anywhere else unhindered. And if you don't like it, you are guilty of a crime. Now, notice some of the things that they said that I thought very interesting. If you import the third world, you become the third world. That is what the UN wants to do to the United States. That's what all the globalists want to do to the United States, and that's why they've been supporting the migrants. They are the ones who are helping to support them. That manner of support? Don't know. Could be money, which would actually mean the United States is funding the migrants indirectly, since the UN gets most of its money from the United States. Also, multinationalism, and they're talking about companies. Multinational companies, you know, the people who run sweatshops every place, so like Nike, who runs sweatshops in Southeast Asia, so they can give money to his kneelership, Colin Kaepernick. Yeah, they would actually control the land masses. The governments would be irrelevant, because the only ones who are providing for the people's needs are those who would be giving them these low-cost quarter an hour or 25 cent a day jobs. And they would be in control, because if you speak against the multinationals, you're speaking against migration, and therefore you're committing a hate crime. Are you picking up on this yet? Oh, by the way, did you hear what he mentioned? They're going to rig the elections in European parliaments next year. Those are going to get rigged. We've already seen the blueprint of that in the U.S. midterm elections. Those were rigged. The elections were stolen. We know this. The progressives will lie about it. They continue to lie about it. No matter how obvious it is, no matter how much evidence there is, you need to really get a clue here. You're being robbed. They're after your identity, they're after your sovereignty, and they want to make sure that you do not exist as a nation. That is their goal. They want to declare this a human right, therefore countries do not have rights, as though countries do not consist of people. You cannot have traditions, you cannot have cultures, and without those things, which are important rallying points by which you resist invasion and resist takeover, they know that you will eventually fold. Now, what they haven't taken into account, I don't believe, is the Islam factor. They honestly think they're going to be able to control Islam. And, good luck with that. Nobody ever has. But if they think that's something they're going to be able to do, then, you know what? Let them find out the hard way. Let me make this clear. The migrant caravans are part of the UN's stated policy, though not implemented officially, of flooding have nations with the citizens of have not nations to bring all nations down to a level of depravity that is existent throughout the culture and ideology of the United Nations. This is why Donald Trump, every time he makes an effort to defend the border, he's doing a great service to the American people. And there is no amount of resistance that he can offer that would not benefit us. I'm going to turn this over now to my good friend Ron Edwards, and after that we'll be back with hour 2 of Black Man Thinking.
Recently, I went to see the Diamond and Silk movie Democrats. In some ways, it was heartbreaking. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards. On today's page from the Edwards Notebook, Diamond and Silk hit it out of the park, exposing the real deal concerning the actions and motives of Democrat Party luminaries like way out Maxine Waters, who lives in a $4 million mansion while thousands of people in her district live in and defecate in the streets. Many people did not realize that crazy Maxine doesn't even live in their district. It was heartbreaking when Diamond and Silk talked to Americans who lost their homes and live in their automobiles. Even more disturbing is that homeless Americans in California have for years been denied assistance, while illegal border crossers are given homes, medical care, schooling, and indoctrinated against our republic. Yet, despite the obvious destructive mission of Democrat politicians and leftist educators, there is an awakening among millions of Americans who no longer are stuck behind the golden donkey and are walking away in droves. I'll be discussing this and much more on the Ron Edwards Experience via AmericaMatters.us SHR Media Fridays at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, and on Sunday midnights on the Talk America Radio Network. I'm Ron Edwards.
Blowing away the myths and revealing the truth. You can continue to blow away the myths with Ron Edwards on Facebook, Twitter, and theronedwards.com. Sponsored by the Tri-County Liberty Coalition.
I have a dream. One day, this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Black Man Thinkin.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Black Man Thinkin.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it's made to you during election time, and you're dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Black Man Thinkin.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Black Man Thinkin.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Black Man Thinkin.
Stanley Levy with Hour 2 of Black Man Thinkin here on the dominant force in Internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Well, Florida's good witch has turned bad. And for those who do not know to whom I refer, that would be the good witch Dr. Brenda Snipes, who kind of is, maybe isn't, the Broward County, Florida supervisor of elections. She's been in that job since 2003. She was appointed by the Globalist, formerly known as Jeb Bush, when he was governor, and she has been subsequently elected to terms in 2004, 2008, 2012, and 2016. Good for her. However, she has also had a history of some jacked up dealings as supervisor of elections. And actually on the 9th of November, while the whole counting flap and debacle was going on, Fox News ran a story that kind of recounted some of what had gone on with that office during her tenure.
Protesters in Florida are denouncing Brenda Snipes. You saw that, split the screen with them there. I should have explained that to you. People going crazy. The Broward County Supervisor of Elections.
Supervisor of corruption! Supervisor of corruption! Supervisor of corruption! Supervisor of corruption! Supervisor of corruption!
So who is Brenda Snipes, and why is she provoking such a strong reaction? Why does she still have a job? Lisa Booth is a senior fellow at the Independent Women's Voice. She joins us right now from undisclosed location. I just saw you, Lisa. Why aren't you in studio?
I'm in D.C. visiting family.
All right. You're supposed to check in with me with that. So, Lisa,
I'm sorry.
Who is this woman?
Well, to your former guest comment, she was appointed by Jeb Bush in 2003, but she is a Democrat, and she has been elected ever since to the position of the supervisor of elections for Broward County. Now, Broward County is the second most populous county in the state. It is also the most Democrat as well. And it's not just Republicans who have been critical of her either. The Miami Herald called Broward County the most controversial department of elections in Florida. So she's also received wide criticism from all around, really dating back to even 2004, where she failed to send out, I think it was something like over 50,000 absentee ballots from individuals who had requested them. But also just look at what happened in this year alone. A judge just ruled that she was in violation of public record laws from Florida for not fulfilling Rick Scott's campaign's request. You also go back to May, and a federal judge found that she was in violation of both state and federal law for illegally destroying ballots in regard to a 2016 primary between Debbie Wasserman Schultz and a Bernie Sanders guy who sued. And mind you, the destroying of these ballots happened in the midst of a lawsuit she was facing regarding public records requests regarding those ballots. So that's kind of sketchy. And then you also go back to August, and a judge ruled in favor of the Florida GOP that she was privately looking at absentee ballots so that they couldn't be contested or looked at by other people. A judge ruled in favor of the Florida GOP regarding that. She's also gotten in trouble for releasing voting information 30 minutes prior than the closing of the polls.
And that was 2016.
2016, when that was actually the same primary where she got in trouble for destroying the ballots with Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So there's been a whole thing, even dating back to 2004, that she has received criticism over, and it's not just from Republicans.
Lisa, not only is she doing a bad job, almost anybody else in the state could be doing a better job. So I asked the governor's office, I said, why isn't she fired? And they said it's a lot harder to fire somebody if they're elected. So it's much more complicated than, let's say, you or I. We can get fired right away, But I guess it's a little different there. Bottom line is, that's where the focus is. It's an extremely blue area. You cannot blame the Scott camp for being worried. Final thought?
Well, he could have removed her for incompetence. There's precedent for that. The person that was in that job before her was removed for that very reason. My understanding is that's not really the approach of the, Rick Scott administration. But I think it's very clear she's incompetent, and there's a lot of questions regarding what she's doing in Broward County.
All right, let's see. Tomorrow, Saturday at noon, we're supposed to get the totals. Hopefully we can move forward from there. Lisa, thanks.
Thanks, Brian. Have a good night.
That report was filed on the 9th of November. Of course, since then, we had continuing drama, but eventually the votes were certified. And 10 days afterward, roughly 10 days after that report was filed, and we were finally getting the news that the elections were decided after having somehow counted whatever was going on in Broward County, then we got this report.
Bill, well, it's not over yet because Fox News has just obtained the resignation letter from the election supervisor in Broward County, Dr. Brenda Snipes, after losing over 2,000 ballots, missing deadlines. She writes to Governor Scott, although I have enjoyed this work tremendously over these many election cycles, both large and small, I am ready to pass the torch. Therefore, I request you accept my letter of resignation effective January 4th, 2019. Dr. Snipes' term was expected to run till 2020. But she came under too much scrutiny. Now Governor-elect DeSantis will have an opportunity to replace her. The other big news, of course, over the weekend, Bill, and that is after 18 years, Bill Nelson conceding to Rick Scott in that Senate race. Nelson lost by 10,033 votes. Senator-elect Scott writing at FoxNews.com, quote, now the voters of Florida have spoken, and I am honored to serve as our state's next senator and share Florida's success with the entire nation. Just a lot of people have been asking me if they still found those missing 2,040 ballots in Broward County. We're not sure, but we're hearing that Dr. Snipes may be holding a press conference at 2. We'll try and find out.
We shall watch. Thank you, Griff.
So her work done, yeah, whatever that work might be, the good witch Dr. Snipes decided to resign. And I guess it was a good time. It was an election. Election was done. There aren't any other major elections that would probably be coming up on the county calendar until 2020. And that would give plenty of time for transition, all kinds of things. Of course, it's kind of curious that she wanted to hang around until January. I'm not exactly sure for what, unless she just wanted another couple of checks to tide her over through the Christmas season. I don't know. However, you heard how it was very difficult in that first report that, to fire someone who had been elected. However, it's a lot easier to take action against somebody who's already filed a resignation letter. And on the 30th of November, outgoing Governor Scott did just that.
She had announced her retirement weeks ago, but tonight Dr. Brenda Snipes is suspended from her position as the Broward Supervisor of Elections.
And tonight, police are standing guard right outside of her office. Local 10 News reporter Christian De La Rosa is live from Lauderhill to show us more. Christian.
And you see those police cars right behind me, the government office telling us that they are here to keep Brenda Snipes from getting access to any government documents or equipment inside. The executive order from the governor says that Brenda Snipes is suspended until further notice without pay.
I have taken responsibility for every act.
Longtime Broward County Supervisor of Elections Brenda Snipes may have thought she beat him to the punch. Following her elections debacle, Snipes recently turned this resignation letter effective January, but now Governor Rick Scott says she's suspended without pay. This executive order obtained by Local 10 News outlines the time Snipes dropped the ball.
I believe that they got intermingled.
Accused of gross lack of transparency, she missed the first deadline to turn in vote totals and was also accused of losing some 2,000 votes during the recount process. The governor accusing her of incompetence, saying in a statement, quote, "After a series of inexcusable actions, it's clear that there needs to be an immediate change in Broward County, and taxpayers should no longer be burdened by paying a salary for a supervisor of elections who has already announced resignation." We went to Snipes' home for a response.
Please leave the property.
But we were asked to leave. The governor naming current president and CEO of Enterprise Florida, Peter Antonacci, once serving as state attorney for Palm Beach County. He also attended Hialeah High School. And Antonacci is now the supervisor of elections for Broward County. Brenda Snipes will be allowed to come back and get her personal belongings from inside the building, but she will need a police escort. We're live in Lauderhill. I'm Christian De La Rosa, Local 10 News.
Leaving in a cloud of controversy. Christian, thanks.
Leaving in a cloud of controversy? Maybe not leaving at all. After Governor Rick Scott, or outgoing Governor Rick Scott, took the action of suspending her, the good witch doctor was not going to allow that to be the last word.
Broward County Supervisor of Elections, Brenda Snipes, well, she is fighting back.
Yeah, she announced today that she is dropping her plans to resign in January after Governor Rick Scott ordered her suspension, accusing her of incompetence. Local 10's Christian De La Rosa spoke to her about her decision. He's live in Fort Lauderdale with more. Christian, what did she say?
Sanella, this political saga continues. You know, Dr. Snipes called a press conference here with her attorneys, but she didn't plan to speak. We pressed, and she did. She and her attorneys say that she is not going anywhere, and they believe the governor order suspension is malicious.
First, I'd like to thank you all for coming here.
Dr. Brenda Snipes taking the mic to defend herself after Florida Governor Rick Scott suspended her as Broward County Supervisor of Elections.
Done our work in an era of quality and integrity.
Following massive criticism over her handling of the vote counting process in the November election, Snipes had turned in this letter of resignation to the governor effective January. Tonight, her attorneys telling us she's no longer going to resign.
We believe these actions are malicious.
Friday, Governor Scott issued this executive order suspending Snipes without pay, accusing her of lack of transparency, missing vote counting deadlines, and even losing thousands of votes, calling her incompetent. Her attorneys saying it's not her fault.
The technology has not kept up with the law. And so as a result of that, there are many things that are simply not working.
Now, Dr. Snipes does admit she's dropped the ball at least once. You'll remember she was accused of illegally destroying ballots from the 2016 election too soon. She says that was simply an honest mistake. We're live in Fort Lauderdale. I'm Christian De La Rosa, Local 10 News.
The attorney was laughable. Technology has not caught up with the law, kept up with the law. Then how come every other county in Florida seems not to have this problem? Only Broward County? So what are you saying? Only Broward County lacks the technology that is prevalent or available in every other county in Florida? How is that the case? How come we don't hear this about anything else? Yeah, well, the answer is simple. The good witch doctor is Snipes is incompetent. Well, actually, I think what you saw in heard in the very first clip, where they were chanting, is more accurate. She is corrupt. She's highly corrupt. So I'm like, okay, here's what you really need to understand. Why are we going through all this? She's incompetent. They couldn't fire her. She finally put her resignation in. The governor took that as initiative to be able to put her aside. She's coming back. Why? Because the Democrat Party intends to continue election theft. And they cannot allow the precedent of the governor of the state stepping in and suspending people and allowing that to stand just because there are vote counting irregularities. If that is the case, then in Florida, which is a very important state in presidential politics, you have now set the precedent that they may do that at any time when they find something. Maybe they will do that during an election count. This is not about the good witch, Dr. Brenda Snipes. It's about her ideology, and it's about whom she actually serves. She does not serve the people of Broward County. She serves an ideology of progressivism. That means we have to have our people in at all costs. That's why the votes are handled the way they are handled, so that we only have to count the ones that give us the advantage. That's why votes are lost. That's why notifications are missed, because there is an agenda that we want to make sure gets done where we have jurisdiction. It ain't that hard, folks. And here is the problem. Broward County is a bunch of foolish Democrats. We already know that. So you can't expect them to make smart decisions. They don't know how to do that. What you can do is make sure that the people who account for the decisions that they make with respect to balloting are upstanding individuals with respect to, well, carrying out the duties of a public office. That's all you can do. The people are allowed to be stupid. The people are allowed to vote Democrat. However, you can make sure that the count reflects nothing more than the stupidity of the people and not the corruption of those who count votes. Brenda Snipes knows what's going on. She's corrupt. She's not stupid. And she knows what it means if she does not challenge this, and this goes, just goes forward, and all of a sudden the governor's stepping in and saying, hey, you guys are jacked up, I'm going to suspend you. Then it's hard to cheat when once your cheating is discovered, you're not allowed into the building. Did you hear what they said? If she came into the building, she was going to have police escort to make sure the only thing she picked up was her personal belongings. Understand what this is about, and 2020 is coming. And if you're not ready to take even stronger action than this, then you may as well stay home, because the votes will already be available. They already have the votes that they need to count, and they won't need anybody actually showing up at the polls. That's where we're headed, unless the American people, and maybe the president, take action. Stanley, Levy, Black Man Thinkin', we'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', here on the dominant force in Internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1, FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5, North Florida Talk Radio, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. So Mia Love ran her mouth this week, or within the last week or so, about her loss, and she decided that she was going to try to make good wine from sour grapes, and that's just kind of the way that goes. But I want to take you back to the day after the midterm elections. Donald Trump did something which was kind of extraordinary, but this is kind of common with Donald Trump, and it's actually common with people who occupy the type of position that Donald Trump has become accustomed to. He's a chief executive officer. So when major events come up and they come and they pass, those type of people tend to take stock, and they do evaluations, and they make commentary. That's what they do. Football coaches do the same thing. Every week you have a game, and at the end of after the game you go in, you say this worked, this didn't, and you assess responsibilities, etc., so on. And you move on to the next one. Well, the only difference between an election and say a football game is instead of there being one every week, there's one every 2 years at the federal level. Donald Trump, sizing up the election before the theft was apparent. It was ugly, the theft that occurred. But assessing that on the 7th, the day after the election, Donald Trump had the following comments, and if you understand what type of person is making these comments, they really don't surprise you. Any executive who is trying to run a successful organization does the exact same thing that Donald Trump did in this clip.
Candidates who embraced our message of low taxes, low regulations, low crime, strong borders, and great judges excelled last night. They excelled. They really, I mean, we have a list of people that were fantastic. And I'm just going to point them out. Mike Bost, Rodney Davis, Andy Barr was fantastic. I went to Kentucky. For the most part, I didn't campaign for the House, but I did actually make a special trip for Andy Barr because he was in a very tough race in Kentucky, and he won. That was a very tough race. The polls were all showing that he was down, and down substantially, and he won. And that one I did do. Pete Stauber of Minnesota, great guy, he's new, and ran a fantastic race. On the other hand, you had some that decided to, let's stay away. Let's stay away. They did very poorly. I'm not sure that I should be happy or sad, but I feel just fine about it. Carlos Cubella, Mike Kaufman. Too bad, Mike. Mia Love. I saw Mia Love. She'd call me all the time to help her with a hostage situation, being held hostage in Venezuela. But Mia Love gave me no love. And she lost. Too bad. Sorry about that, Mia. And Barbara Comstock was another one. I mean, I think she could have won that race, but she didn't want to have any embrace. For that, I don't blame her. But she lost, substantially lost. Peter Roskam didn't want the embrace. Eric Paulson didn't want the embrace. And in New Jersey, I think he could have done well, but it didn't work out too good. Bob Eugen, I feel badly because I think that's something that could have been won. That's a race that could have been won. John Faso, those are some of the people that, decided for their own reason not to embrace whether it's me or what we stand for, but what we stand for meant a lot to most people. And we've had tremendous support, and tremendous support in the Republican Party, among the biggest support in the history of the party. I've actually heard at 93% it's a record, but I won't say that because who knows.
What you have there is a chief executive who is taking inventory after a major event. It could have been someone who was talking about what went well and what did not go well after a major store opening, or in the case of Donald Trump, okay, we opened this newest hotel or resort. Here's what we did well. Here's what didn't go well. Here's where deviation from message hurt us. Here's where embrace of message helped us, and vice versa in both cases. That's all you're hearing there. For those who have Trump derangement syndrome, they hear something else. I don't hear anything other than, all right, we gave a message. We asked people to use this message. We said it would help them. Some wanted to embrace the message. Those who did tend to do well. Those who did not embrace the message, yeah, they're on the streets. Yeah, but Democrats, well, the Democrats cheated. But the thing is, if you're going to overcome the election theft or the attempted election theft of the Democrats, you had to simply make yourself not the same as a Democrat and embrace a message that they did not have. And he laid that out. Low taxes, good judges, the rest. Well, they didn't go with that. One of those he mentioned, and it seemed kind of prominent that he mentioned her, was Mia Love, who had served 2 terms in the House from the state of Utah. Not that many black people in Utah. She's black, or she's actually Haitian, which, as far as people in America are concerned, makes her black. She's married to a white man. Is that significant? It is. Is it important? Up to you to decide. But Mia Love made some very interesting comments in her concession speech and decided she was going to kind of aim at Trump directly and at Republicans in general, as she had to take that L after serving 2 terms. You got to remember, in the House of Representatives, despite all the stuff that goes on, there's still a better than 90% re-election rate. So for you to get defeated as opposed to resign, yeah, something wrong. But here's what Mia Love had to say, and this was on the 26th after she finally had to throw in the towel and cry in her beer or whatever she had to do and then come out and make her statement.
The president's behavior towards me made me wonder, what did he have to gain by saying such a thing about a fellow Republican? It was not really about asking him to do more, was it? Or was it something else? Well, Mr. President, we'll have to chat about that. However, this gave me a clear vision of his world as it is. No real relationships, just convenient transactions. That is an insufficient way to implement sincere service and policy. Above all, my experience in the last year has provided me a big reminder of who I am and what my purpose is. This election experience and these comments shines a spotlight on the problems Washington politicians have with minorities and Black Americans. It's transactional. It's not personal. You see, we feel like politicians claim they know what's best for us from a safe distance, yet they're never willing to take us home. This election was horrible, and it has cost us greatly. I saw the media write uneducated, unfair, irresponsible stories. My ethics, my record, lied about, tarnished, and repeated over and over again on TV right in front of our children. Coordinated efforts presented a false case against me and those ads that were created and funded by my opponent. Sadly, their character assassination tactics have so stained our state that now citizens should expect that this is how elections will be won. Victory is theirs. I believe that we've elected a wolf in sheep's clothing, but the question remains, at what cost to the people of Utah? Good news is, I'm not going away. But now, I am unleashed, I am untethered, and I am unshackled. And I can say exactly what's on my mind.
And if anybody cared what was on your mind, you wouldn't have lost. This is ludicrous. This is silly. It's all yes, it's exactly transaction. You want me to tell you how transactional it is? The people of a given congressional district say who is going to go to Washington to transact business on our behalf. We're not interested in you forming relationships with other people. What we're interested in is you representing our interests in Washington, D.C. Now, I imagine in order for you to do that well, you will probably have to make some transactional deals with other people who are there to do the same thing, represent those who voted for them. Are you really that dense? See, now, I'm not among those who was ever a Mia Love fan. I'm sorry. It has nothing to do with who she's married to. That's her business. I don't care. But when you're supposedly a non-Democrat touting the healthcare nonsense message, you know what? Something doesn't smell right about you. In Africa you would be an endangered species because you'd be called a rhino. But in Washington, D.C., not so rare. Of course, there are quite a few less of them. There are significantly fewer rhinos in D.C. now after the election, even with the cheating. The election cheating got rid of people, some of whom were actually not bad, but it also helped clean out a bunch of rhinos. So now they're going to have to tighten up the election scrutiny and actually run on a message that is not Democrat light. Mia Love was Democrat light. She was kind of Democrat. I'm worried about how you feel. Let me help you out. I've never cared how the President of the United States felt about me. I didn't even think that he knew my name or needed to represent my interests, because I'm an American. If you do what's right for Americans, you're probably going to help me out. I don't expect my congressman to embrace me and have great love for me when there's at least 100, 200,000 other people in the congressional district. Just, you know what? Deal with that. Just deal with that. What are the interests of the district? If I don't like what's going on in the district, I have the option to move to a place where the people think more like I do. So, Mia Love is just not being truthful, trying to say that Republicans and white conservatives won't take minorities into their homes or into their hearts. And well, if white Republicans don't take minorities into their homes and into their hearts, how did you end up in a white man's bed, dear heart? Because I imagine there's a fair chance that your in-laws, your mother and father-in-law, are likely Republican, and there's an even higher probability that they're white. But are we to conclude that they never took you in? You've never been to their home? You've never entered it? Is that what you want us to believe? I mean, if that's your story, that's your story. You can stick to it. It just doesn't make any sense. And if you're going to put that out there, let's remember this. Utah, the state in which you were twice elected to Congress, is nearly 90% white and less than 2% black. It's about 13% Hispanic. So during your 3 congressional campaigns, 2 of which were successful, are you saying that no white folks or no Republican folks embraced you? Nobody took you in? Nobody took you home? You didn't break bread with anybody? Is that the story you're trying to tell me? Everybody fed you with a long-handled spoon, but they sent you to Congress twice? That's your story? Come on now. You took the L. You got beat. And you got beat because you're a rhino. You got beat because the Democrats also cheat, and you didn't create enough of a difference between you and a Democrat for people to look past the lying, the cheating, and the media and go to the polls and think you were the better choice. This is on you, dear. And it's not on anybody else. You could have embraced Trump. It might have helped you. It might have. Because you didn't have a problem calling on Donald Trump when you wanted someone's help to get a hostage out of Venezuela. You didn't have any problem calling him then. But when your political life is at stake, you show your true colors, which is you are not down with the program that is actually trying to make America better or make America great again. So you bit the political hand that fed you, and now you're on the outside, trying to make wine from sour grapes. One thing I have learned, adversity always reveals what someone has inside of them. And now, Mia Love has demonstrated what she contains. She's unleashed, she can say what she wants, and guess what? She's going to make it very clear that she is a progressive black female. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', will be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also, WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Final segment of the show. I'm just going to give you some examples, although maybe you really shouldn't need them, about the emasculation, the institutional emasculation of men, and especially black men, that's going on in society, particularly in professional sports. And it is all tied up around women who have no problem creating situations that they should not, so that they can actually make victims of men. And a couple have turned up in the last couple of weeks, and they're interesting. This happened with the San Francisco 49ers.
Reuben Foster, who seemed like such a strong piece of their future, is out of a job, accused once again of domestic violence.
Too many things have happened, and we've tried to help him out a lot, and I know he has been trying to, but this was a mess up that it doesn't matter whether he did or not.
Reuben Foster was arrested last night at 9:10 p.m. Eastern Time in the 49ers team hotel in Tampa and booked into jail 2 hours later, charged with misdemeanor assault against Alyssa Ennis, the same alleged victim that accused Foster of domestic violence last February before recanting her allegation. Following that incident, the 49ers made it clear Foster was on thin ice and that no further charges would be tolerated.
It's been too much, and, I care about Reuben, but no one's more important than this team. And our number of rules, you got to protect the team, and he's put us in a bad light too much.
Tampa police said of the charges, quote, Foster slapped her phone out of her hand, pushed her in the chest area, and slapped her with an open hand on the left side of her face. Officers observed a 1-inch scratch on the victim's left collarbone, unquote. Foster was released this morning on a $2,000 bail and was cut by the 49ers. Richard Sherman, who came to Foster's defense the last time Foster was accused, had this reaction.
Disappointed. Disappointed. I think everybody is. He's a great kid. When you grow up under the circumstances that he grew up and, don't have parents, moving from home to home, you just make the best of what you got, and that's what he tried to do. And everybody was doing their part, to make sure he kind of stayed on the right track, and he was working hard. He knew his deficiencies and knew what he had to do, and it's just unfortunate that this situation keeps coming up.
The 49ers gambled on drafting Foster, who slipped to the 31st spot in the 2017 draft. The pick initially appeared to be a steal, with Foster finishing second on the team with 72 tackles, but injuries and a 2-game suspension limited him to 6 games this season.
It's just a really compromising situation to put the team in repeatedly. So you understand the decision that an organization has to make after repeated offenses.
Yeah, Ruben's a great guy. He's made some bad decisions. I've always had good interactions with Ruben. It just pisses me off that we're sitting here talking about this after a game, and I wish we could talk about football.
Yeah, why are we talking about nonsense regarding lying females after a game instead of talking about football, particularly with some guy who had nothing to do with the incident? Why are you talking to him about something? I'm not involved. I'm a football player. You're here after we just finished a football game, and you want to talk about... Yeah, because you want to emasculate men, especially young black men. You're out to get them. So let's talk about the good news. The good news is Reuben Foster, after being released by the 49ers, was signed by the Washington Redskins. Now, of course, there's outrage about that. How can you support domestic violence? Well, let's back up on something. First of all, the domestic violence, his accuser has a very strange history. In 2011, she was found to have lied about another gentleman, maybe I'm using that term a little bit too loosely, that she was involved with. She lied about domestic violence with him. With respect to Reuben Foster, she lied about the incident that happened in 2018, saying he struck her. Matter of fact, what happened was she got into an altercation with another woman that was so severe that that woman beat up Alyssa Ennis, the woman who accused Reuben Foster, and put her in the hospital, and she blamed that on Foster, but then later recanted in open court, saying it was all about money and her trying to mess up his career. Now, after that, as you heard, he was told he was on thin ice. One of the restrictions reportedly that he was given was not to have any more contact with Alyssa Ennis. So how does she end up at the hotel in Tampa 9 months later? Apparently, or possibly, reportedly, he snuck her into the hotel. So Reuben Foster is stupid. Now, I understand his history. I can understand he has a particular attraction or a connection with this female, or he feels he has one. But this woman hates him. This woman is death to him. She is the worst thing that could happen in his life, and he doesn't know how to cut her loose. And I understand the 49ers. Man, we're willing to help you, but if you know what, we can't help somebody who doesn't want to be helped. You're out of here. Hopefully, he'll get it together with the Redskins. Why do I hold out hope for him? Because he didn't do it. Period. He did not do this. Well, she could be telling the truth this time. She lied in 2011. She lied 7 years later in 2018. And now 9 months later you think she's reformed? Get out of here with that foolishness. But to basically run the man out of town, which I understand because he wasn't upfront and he wasn't trustworthy with the 49ers. But to say he deserves no second chance when he actually did not do the wrong is ridiculous. Give him a chance. I didn't say give him a chance after he beat the girl. There's nothing to indicate that he ever did. So why are you going after him? Why are you making it such a big deal? Why are you going after Washington Redskins? I think the Redskins should simply do this. They sign the guy, let him cool his jets till the end of the year, say he's hurt, whatever, and then we'll deal with him next season after all this calms down, because I think the more the truth comes out, the more people will be willing to say, you know what, he didn't do it. So, okay, fine. So they'll boo him during preseason games, and they'll boo him on the road for a year, and then we'll just move on. There's another case which is a little bit worse. And that would be, or different. I don't know if it's worse. I think it's simply different. That would be the case of Kareem Hunt in Kansas City.
The NFL is fending off a new controversy this morning after one of the league's newest stars was seen on video attacking a woman. The website TMZ released video showing Kansas City Chiefs running back Kareem Hunt in a violent confrontation with a woman in a hotel hallway back in February. At one point, the video shows Hunt kicking the woman while she's on the ground. Kenneth Craig is here with the details on this disturbing story. Kenneth, good morning.
Well, good morning to you, Anthony. The Chiefs cut ties with Hunt, releasing him just last night, hours after that video surfaced. However, the team was aware of the incident since it occurred nearly 10 months ago.
Hurdles him at the 5. Counted for a touchdown.
Kareem Hunt's star was on the rise in the NFL. After leading the league in rushing as a rookie last year, Hunt has helped the Chiefs to one of the best records in the NFL this year. But now he's without a job. This video from a Cleveland hotel on February 10th shows Hunt wearing a black long-sleeve shirt pushing a woman. The woman then shoves her hand in Hunt's face. Several people try to restrain both Hunt and the woman. Moments later, Hunt charges into a person standing next to the woman, knocking her to the floor. Another woman is recording the incident on her phone when a man snatches it away from her. As the altercation ends, Hunt is seen kicking the woman while she's still on the ground. When Cleveland police arrived, they got two versions of what allegedly happened. They decided not to file any charges. Kansas City Chiefs executives have been aware of the incident since it happened. In August, the team's CEO, Clark Hunt, was asked about Kareem Hunt's off-season issues.
Kareem is a young man, second year in the league, obviously had a very big year on the field last year. I'm sure he learned some lessons this offseason and hopefully won't be in those kind of situations in the future.
However, within hours of seeing the video, the Chiefs released Hunt. In a statement, the team said Kareem was not truthful in discussions with Chiefs officials and that the video, quote, confirms that fact. Hunt released a statement of his own expressing regret. "I want to apologize for my actions," he wrote. "I hope to move on from this."
The Chiefs say the National Football League was also aware of the incident and is investigating. According to a report in the Kansas City Star, the NFL tried but failed to obtain the video from both the hotel and Cleveland police. Very disturbing to watch, very difficult to watch.
And it's reminiscent, again, of going back to Ray Rice, which is more than 4 years ago, I believe now at this point, where, again, the NFL didn't have the video first. TMZ had it, and people are wondering, why can't you get these videos?
Yeah, but they were aware of the incident. That's
10 months ago.
Yeah. And surprisingly, it took so long for the video to surface.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Kenneth Craig. Appreciate your time.
Let's break this one down. Back in February, Kareem Hunt was at a hotel in the Cleveland area. Two white teenage females, yes, it matters that they were white, were in his room drinking. He did not know they were underage. He knew they were in his room. He knew they were drinking. When their correct age was made known to him, he put them out of his hotel room. Once out of the hotel room, they stood in the hallway verbally assaulting him from a distance, calling him the dreaded N-word repeatedly, and this went on for the better part of a half hour. At this time, Mr. Hunt came out into the hallway, in effect saying, "What's up?" I'm sure there are words to that effect. The interesting thing is the video lacks the context of audio. And as soon as he comes out of the room, the woman who has been verbally assaulting him runs up to him and gets in his face. There's some pushing, there's some shoving. She pushes him. He pushed her away. She pushed him. You get it. And then there's this, he kicked her. Yeah, a kick that couldn't have even gotten a helium balloon airborne. The fact that it's a kick. We can call it a kick, and therefore you can eviscerate the guy. It was nothing. How do I say it was nothing? You weren't there. Yeah, but guess what? The Cleveland police were. They went. They did some good old-fashioned on-the-spot police work. Let's talk to everybody involved. Let's look at the tape. And they said, there's no there, and charged no one. Let me repeat that. Law enforcement, which knows the statutes regarding domestic violence, looked at the incident, talked to those involved, reviewed the videotape, and said, there is nothing here. The problem for Kareem Hunt is when the Kansas City Chiefs asked him about it, as they said, he was not truthful. He lied to them. And he's a young kid. I get that. And he got scared, and he saw his career going away. He didn't think anybody was going to protect him unless he told a lie. He told a lie. And as a result, you know what? Let me help you out. The men in your life, if you're a young man, can stand beside you through anything as long as they know what happened. Because we have answers for people who tell us the truth. We know how to defend that. But when you put us on an island where we're having to defend something and people know something we do not, that you did, but you chose not to tell us, we have no cloak of protection for that. But the idea that women should be able to disrespect young black men with impunity to try to mess up their careers. And I wonder if the two underage teenage white girls were ever charged with underage drinking, because they did commit a crime. They did commit a crime. But they're not going to be held accountable for that. Alyssa Ennis lied on Reuben Foster more than once. Is she going to be held accountable for that? Reuben Foster's being held accountable for something he did not do, and she's not being held accountable for something that she did. Do you understand where this is going now? And Kareem Hunt, in his infinite wisdom, I know what happened. He's like, man, your career's on the line. You better go out there and you better say you're sorry. He gave an interview where he's like, I really don't want to talk about what happened. I just want to say I'm sorry, and I used bad judgment, and I should have de-escalated. All these things are talking points from lawyers and from NFL PR guys, because, man, you made the league look bad. You need to say this. And not talk about what actually happened. Further emasculating the young man. Don't tell the truth. Don't tell your side. Just say what you need to say so that you can have a chance to play in the league again. Because the truth won't set you free. It sets you free from law enforcement, but it won't set you free from a NFL that is no longer about football. It's about public relations. We don't even hit anybody in the NFL anymore. If you hit somebody in the NFL during a game, you risk being flagged for a 15-yard penalty. And if it's a really good hit, they will throw you out of the game. That's what the NFL has become. So no, they don't have your back. And the NFL is 74% black. So all these black men, though they are well paid, are living under this PC cloud that you have to basically check your testicles at the door. Don't play the game the way you were taught to play it. Don't play the game the way it's supposed to be played. Don't do any of that. And if a woman says anything about you, step and fetch, man. Just step and fetch. Don't stand up for yourself. No, you don't stand up for yourself. You just say how sorry you are, and you talk about how, man, you know, I should have handled it differently. You do all that. And that is also prevalent throughout society. This is institutional. We are no longer a society of strong men. We are a society of scared men. We are a society that does everything it can, almost, to favor women over men. We believe their lies before we believe the truth a man would tell. And I'm going to say this. I put this out on Facebook, actually. I am aware of no society throughout history which ever bettered itself or improved its standing among the world by favoring women over men. Doesn't happen. You need strong men. Strong men need to be able to express themselves. And a culture that has strong men also needs to have women who are respectful. We don't have respectful women in the United States. They actually think they're better than men. They think they're more important than men. They do. And it's not just all the progressives and the leftists. You have a whole lot of women who do not identify as either leftist or progressive who think they're better than men. Because when they hear these stories, they believe every lying chica just like everybody else. Me, I'm different. I don't believe you. I don't believe you until you prove it. Because I'm not going to stand by and watch as men go down in flames to serve political correctness to the detriment not only of men, but also to the society at large, which means women would have no protector because they obviously cannot protect themselves. Else they wouldn't be lying on men, and that's our show. God bless you. God keep you is my prayer. And until next week, do take care.
You've been listening to Black Man Thinkin' with your host, Stan Levy. Join Stan midnight to 2 a.m. That's late Monday night into early Tuesday morning. And find him on the web at Black Man Thinkin' without the G. That's blackmanthinkin.com.